much does that little Biz Wizard cost?
That little Giz Wizard, I believe, is a $1,000 investment, but it's proven quite helpful in particular committee meetings. Theoretically, it picks up the sound and the camera will immediately go to you. But as an alternative, you also can control it with this.
Well, the idea is looking at it.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy August 1st already. Yeah, I did like to call our LAFCO meeting to order. And Erica, if you could call the roll, please.
Commissioner Desmond,
Here.
Commissioner McNamara,
Here. Got echoes going on.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Here.
Commissioner Willis,
Here.
Commissioner Salas, absent. Commissioner Kate.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson. Absent. Commissioner Vanderland.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Vargas. Absent. Alternate Commissioner Becker.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Drake. Absent. Alternate Commissioner Von Wilpert is absent. Alternate Commissioner Mathis. Commissioner Mathis there. Commissioner Mathis.
Here.
Thank you. There is a virtual quorum with 8 members present.
Anderson reporting in with the wrong name.
So 9 members present.
Okay, thank you very much. Could you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
The United States of America. And to the republic which stands.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item here is the agenda review. I'd like to ask Keith, do we have any updates or changes for today's agenda?
Thank you, Chair Desmond, and good morning, commissioners and guests. So as for the question, no changes to the agenda itself. What staff posted early last week has held. That means, among other things, we're going to have a presentation from the new county planning director. And then we have a couple of items of interest, I think, to our attendees, both here in the room as well as in the virtual world. We are going to get to our proposed Vista reorganization proposal, Vista, and then we are also going to take up our draft municipal service review on the city of Escondido. Now, I do know that there are persons, again, here in the room as well as perhaps virtually, who may want to speak on any item. So if you're here in the room, please go ahead and fill out one of our speaker slips. They're different colors based on your orientation at the moment, oppose, support, and so on. If you are online, you'd like to get into the queue, you certainly can do that by following the instructions on the cover page to the agenda, and that involves sending an email to Erica. And on that note, Commission Clerk Tammy Luckett was a bit under the weather, so Erica is doing double duty today. And just for the record, I believe when we called roll, all the regular voting members of the commission were present with the exception of Mary Salas. So let me check in. Is Mary online yet? Okay, so then in her absence, Commissioner Becker will be voting. So with that, we are good to go.
Dean, David Drake here. I am here.
Thank you, David.
There he is.
There, thank you. So do any commissioners have any updates or changes to today's agenda? Either here or online? Gone. All right. Well, we're going to move on to our presentations. And our first presentation is Davia Lynch. She's our Director of Planning and Development Services for the county. She's going to give us an update on the upcoming activities in the unincorporated areas of the county. So Davia, thanks for making time with us this morning. It's always great to see you and work with you and having you today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Desmond. I appreciate it. Thank you all so much for having me this morning. I appreciate it. I wanted to share a little bit with you, sort of a snapshot of the Planning Development Services world today. I introduced myself as well. I've been the Planning and Development Services Director for about 8 months, since November of last year. Prior to that, I was with the City of San Marcos as their Development Services Director for 5 years and with North County Transit District. And then I did work with the county for over a decade before that, so this is a bit of a homecoming for me. I'm very pleased to be back here. I've also been a San Diego County resident for most of my life. I'm now in North County, but I do love working and playing throughout the region. So thank you to all of you for making this a wonderful place to live and work. So in terms of planning and development services, just to share a little bit with you, we do everything in the planning and development world for privately initiated and sometimes publicly initiated vertical development. That's planning, engineering, building. We often have discretionary projects, as you know very well, based on the scope of your authority, that may ultimately go through a LAFCO process, either for annexation of the land itself or to annex into various districts. So we do have quite a bit of engagement in that sense. We also lead other quality of life programs such as code compliance and long range planning. We're working quite a bit on our climate action plan, multiple species conservation program, and other activities like that. We have about a $51 million budget. This year we have 270 plus staff. We added 35 in the last budget. Our board did. Thank you to our board for providing those for fiscal year 22-23. A lot of that is for board priorities, policy, new innovative policies, outreach, data-driven efforts. And then some of that's for existing workload, largely in our code compliance and building business units. I'd like to share a little bit with you about the development landscape. I know that's ever changing and very much what you all are navigating on a regular basis. For us, we have seen nearly 19,000 building permits in the past year. That's a high. For us, we're really at a peak given that component of the economy that's been going very strong. We finalized construction or issued certificate of occupancy on nearly 1,200 new homes last year. That's the highest year in over a decade since 2009. We've also seen a really significant increase in accessory dwelling unit production. You've probably seen this throughout the region with some of the changes in state legislation. And here at the county, we've also taken some other steps to really facilitate that. We've seen over 420 accessory dwelling units this past year, up from 100, 150, maybe on a good year prior to that. There's been a tremendous amount of streamlining at the state level. We've taken that further at the county. We've also provided fee waivers, over $3.3 million in fee waivers for accessory dwelling units. We also created online pre-approved design plans. So if you're somebody coming in to produce an accessory dwelling unit for family or friends or what have you, we could save you up to $30,000 for that. So some really significant incentives for ADUs. And we're taking similar steps with renewable energy waivers. That's something that we are also focused on and have seen a tremendous amount of this past year. 11,000 plus permits, 1,000 of those for battery storage. So those are some of the big sort of booming areas from a development and solar energy standpoint for us. I'll also share that we have discretionary permits or entitlements in process, over 1,300 of those. So the county is still very active in that regard, and those range everything from fences in your backyard to major projects. So talking about development, I know that some of those numbers may be surprising. There are a lot of changes going on in the world that may raise questions about where development's going. So I'm projecting and speculating as we all are, but I'll share a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of trends. We're projecting less larger projects, some of these big projects we've seen historically in the more rural suburban areas for a number of reasons that I'll talk about in a moment. And seeing a lot more smaller projects, more likely closer to the higher density areas, more urbanized areas and infrastructure. That's for 3 reasons. One of the big reasons, and you know this very well as the LAFCO Commission, all the easy land is gone. The easy stuff is not available anymore. There are slope constraints, lack of infrastructure, various other restrictions that really make it difficult to develop most of what's remaining. The second reason are state and local regulatory changes. The state regulatory framework, which I'll talk about in a moment, has really, really dramatically changed. So that will likely drive quite a bit of our future development patterns. And third are the continuous efforts that the county is making to streamline development where it is going to be feasible and desirable, and incentivize that as much as possible for various types of housing, with a big emphasis on affordable and senior housing. So I'll talk very briefly, and I want to be respectful of the time you've allotted to me today in your busy agenda. Just talk briefly about the changes in the state regulatory context. I know this is a dialogue in the region, and I want to speak to it. We are working with our board at their direction to find options and implement strategies that really balance a lot of the direction we are getting from the state to facilitate affordable housing, to minimize and reduce greenhouse gases, and then also to reduce vehicle miles traveled. So we see a lot of tensions in a lot of the state direction, and we're working very hard to navigate that and really optimize and create those outcomes. Vehicle miles traveled, you all may be very familiar with that. Essentially, it's a new metric that is essentially going to most likely streamline development in more urbanized areas and create some development challenges for development outside of those areas and the more remote areas that require you to drive back and forth. So our board is very focused on creating housing opportunities, again, as I mentioned, especially affordable housing, as well as protecting the environment, supporting agriculture, combating climate change, and all of those through an equity lens. So we're doing a lot of navigating to thread the needle and move the dial on each of those issues. With respect to development, as I mentioned, we'll be focusing on where we can increase those development opportunities through public processes, through public engagement, and identify where there really are some opportunities for future development. Some of that may be potentially in areas that are closer to urbanized areas, possibly closer to existing incorporated communities, so in the sphere of influence. So that may be areas where we might be engaging with you in the future. And then while we are just beginning efforts coming from our board to study that further and see what opportunities might be available, again, as I mentioned, there will be extensive community engagement, and we would see more in the future for that. And finally, with respect to our streamlining efforts, we have over 60 programs in our existing housing element to facilitate housing. We're working on 5 of those this year. They'll be phased over 8 years. And I wanted to share with you, we'll be bringing forward an inclusionary housing ordinance. So residential housing at a certain threshold will be required to develop affordable housing moving forward. We're also working on various streamlining to streamline senior and assisted living care facilities, and then also a small lot subdivision ordinance, again, to help facilitate those smaller developments where possible. So as I mentioned, big focus on housing and the environment. We'll continue to be happy to update you at any point on that. But again, I know you have a busy agenda this morning, and I appreciate the opportunity to update you on some of the things going on in our world. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any, thank you very much for the presentation. It's good to hear that we're actually building housing, which is very fortunate in these days. I'm just curious, do we have any questions or comments from any of our commissioners? Either online, let's see, hands up.
Chair Desmond, I have an observation for the commission based on Davia's comments, which are great. And again, Davia, thank you so much for coming to LAFCO this morning. Because commission, a lot of the work Davia and her team does at PDS affects LAFCO, maybe not directly, but certainly indirectly, given things that we do, in particular with special districts in the unincorporated area, generally have a tie back to decisions made at PDS. So one of the comments that we should keep in mind is this syncing up, as the county, as Davia mentioned, is starting to focus development in these VMT zones, right? How do they interplay with LAFCO's separate but hopefully related growth management policies when we set spheres of influence? So as we all know, we have a number of special districts that serve areas outside of main transportation corridors. So as we go forward, and we want those districts to remain solvent and operating, and perhaps even with some growth, we'll want to partner with Davi and her team proactively in making sure that we don't cross any signals in that way. So just an observation that certainly we at staff are thinking about. So with that, Chair Desmond, thank you for entertaining the comment.
Tavi, thank you very much. Always great to hear good news on housing front, so appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Next, we have public comments and related requests. Do we have any public comments on anything not on today's agenda, or anyone calling in for items not on the agenda today? To Erica, whoever. Erica?
I haven't received any pre-registered comments, and right now there are no live email comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the consent items. We got 14 items today on the consent calendar. Would anyone like to, any of the board members like to pull any items or have any comments on any of these consent items at all?
I just have one.
Mr. Willis.
So the protest vote was actually, there was no opposition. Is that no?
So with respect to 5H protest hearing results for Fallbrook, there was protest, but and I think our report identifies the volume, but there was none to trigger a subsequent action by LAFCO. And there was a single protest for 5I, that's the Ramona reorganization item.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments on consent? I have a couple. First of all, on the protest hearing there in Fallbrook and the latent powers activation, I do want to thank Keen and his team for setting up and conducting the protest hearings on this item. I guess there was one minor hiccup. I understand they had the old LAFCO mailing address on the protest forms, but staff rose to the challenge there, and they actually continued the hearing for an additional 2 weeks. To allow any members enough time for the public protest. So thank you very much for that effort. On 5M, this is the Califco annual conference. I understand nominations for the 2 open city public seats for Califco Southern Region must be submitted by September 19th. And in this item, you're authorizing myself as chair to make those nominations. And I realize those need to be done, but Keen, I guess, I'm going to ask you for myself, and you're going to have to do it right now, but maybe in emails, just kind of how that process works, who's eligible, and once I do make the decision on the nominations, that we let the commission be aware of those mechanics, who qualifies, and those types of things for those appointments. So just kind of keep the commission on the aware of the mechanics of how it gets done and the process as we go through it. So it just doesn't happen without their knowledge. So on that, and then on item 6M, 6N, as in November, I'm going to be voting for alternative 2. This is for the hybrid remote meetings on item 2. So on item 5N, I'll be supporting alternative 2. So is there anyone else or a motion for the consent items?
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner McNamara and a second by Commissioner McKenzie. We already asked for public comment. We have no public comment on the consent at all. Okay. So with that, let's have a roll call vote on items on the consent calendar.
Commissioner Desmond,
Aye.
Commissioner McNamara,
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderlyn,
Aye.
Commissioner Willis,
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Kate,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Becker.
Yes, I do see Commissioner Salas is here, though.
Right. It says Samantha T, but it's really me.
I recognized you.
Commissioner Salas.
Yes,
votes.
yes.
Okay, so there are 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Before we, our next items are public hearing items. And we've got some before us today, but 6A is the first one. But before we get started on 6A, do we have any commissioners that have any ex parte communications they wish to disclose for this particular item? Any online? With that, let's open up the public hearing. Keen, do you have anything for us to kick off at item 6A?
I'm going to ask Priscilla Mumpower to do the presentation, and just as a note for Priscilla and or me, to note at the end, we do have some supplemental correspondence that we want to acknowledge into the record.
Thank you. So today's public hearing is for the commission to consider a proposal brought to you by the city of Vista through formal council resolution. It's called the Mar Vista Island Reorganization, and it is an annexation request involving approximately 140 unincorporated acres with an estimated resident population of 375 residents. The proposal also involves two concurrent boundary changes, and these involve special districts, and it involves the Buena Sanitation District as well as the Vista Fire Protection District. As for the affected territory itself, I'll use the map up here to aid me in this description as well as that table, but it lies entirely within the city's sphere and is divided between two non-contiguous areas located closely to one another and along Mar Vista Drive. The two areas also are currently entirely surrounded by existing city limits, which enables the city of Vista to come forward today requesting approval under the expedited island annexation proceedings. And if the required findings are made by the commission, this means, among other things, that protest proceedings would be waived. With the commitment that I'll come back to talk about island annexation proceedings, I do want to further drill down on the two areas on the screen. So area 1 comprises one parcel, 2 acres in size, and currently developed with a single family residence. Area 2 comprises approximately 140 acres, is 108 parcels, and with the southern portion making up the Stonegate subdivision, which was approved by the county in 2003. As for the proposal purpose, Vista is seeking approval today for 2 distinct reasons. One being an immediate purpose to resolve an outside service agreement with the Buena Sanitation District, which involves the Stonegate subdivision, which has become administratively burdensome, and it would commit the city to receive wastewater flows from the Stonegate subdivision. The second and more long-term purpose for this proposal involves filling in the 2 holes, as you see on the map, in Vista's incorporated boundary, and in doing so, allow for the city to better coordinate land use and service planning in West Vista. Now, as we detailed in the agenda report before the commission, staff believes the merits and associated timing of the proposal are warranted, and this includes addressing all the baseline factors required for consideration anytime LAFCO takes up jurisdictional changes. Staff also believes the commission can and should make all the necessary findings to approve the proposal under the island annexation provisions, which are listed up on this next slide. And I can go into further details should the commission prefer. We also believe that this otherwise merited proposal becomes better implemented with applying the following 4 special conditions, which are on this following slide. And beginning with A, requiring the city to catalog and grandfather all existing land uses within the affected territory, and in doing so, minimize any immediate impacts to current landowners. B, requiring the city to enter into an agreement with the county, which extends the provisions and protections of the county's existing North County Multiple Species Conservation Plan. And then the other 2 are more administrative, but requiring 5 public roadway drainage facilities to be transferred to the city, as well as having the city assume responsibility for maintaining, enforcing, and complying with best management practices as outlined in the County of San Diego's Public Works Watershed Unit. And so with this overview noted, I want to confirm that notice for the proposal as well as for the public hearing today was published in the newspaper as well as mailed out to all the residents within the affected territory as well as within a 300-foot buffer as required under statute. And we have received several comments on the proposal. Those have been attached to the agenda report and or have been forwarded to the commission. I also know that we received 2 comments over the weekend, and those will be forwarded as well as posted online. And I know we also have Don Conley joining us today from the City of Vista, Director of Community Planning, as well as several public members who'd like an opportunity to speak. And so with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, do any of the commissioners have any questions of staff before we go to public comment on this, particularly on the presentation? Then we go to other comments later. Do we have anybody online?
Okay.
Whoever should be asking.
No commission.
No, okay. We do have 2 public speakers on this item. First of all, we have Robert Rawl. Are you here? Robert, you want to come up and give us your input on this particular item?
Yes, I was one of those that mailed commentary that was probably received over the weekend. I'm going to read a statement into the record here to save Erica from doing so. I'm not opposed to this annexation. My concern is with the decision to use a streamlined approval process. Unless appropriately conditioned, it's the final nail in the coffin for grandfathering in an acknowledged public nuisance. We've been patient for years for the next discretionary approval to trigger deferred environmental review and mitigation of conflicting offsite development, which is acknowledged as having never should have been approved. The Superior Court has dismissed for now, without prejudice, our demand for the county to perform a mandatory subsequent or supplemental EIR and a substitute alternative mitigation measures. It appears that LAFCO intends to approve that Vista grandfather in the existing uses without consideration that by grandfathering in rather than enforcing the non-compliance of existing issues will result in the possibility of a significant effect due to the unusual circumstances involved. The conflicting work on adjacent properties violates multiple city ordinances, inadequate grading, setbacks, excessive slope, lack of required drainage structures, zoning violations for excessive depth without a variance, subdivision violations, and 2 homes being supported by inadequate septic systems, which potentially affects all downstream tributaries for now and in perpetuity. By definition, the conflicting offsite development is dangerous construction. By definition, the conflicting offsite development is considered a public nuisance. Oh, my scroll doesn't work without the keyboard. Thank you for your patience. Yes, even engineers struggle with computers.
At least you're not echoing.
Well, cannot get it to scroll.
Okay.
Oh, you got it. And there's too much more to this. The City of Vista is requesting approval under the expedited islands annexation proceedings. CEQA is very specifically excludes the use of a categorical exemption under the conditions of the possibility of a significant effect due to unusual circumstances. I believe that I've clearly enough established for both the city and LAFCO in previous communications that there is a reasonable possibility that the activity will have a significant effect on the environment due to unusual circumstances. It's not a legitimate action to grant approval under expedited island annexation proceedings, given that there's a reasonable possibility that doing so will have a significant effect on the environment due to unusual circumstances. LAFCO has the authority to require changes in a project to lessen or avoid both the direct and indirect effects of that part of the project, which the agency will be called on to approve. LAFCO is being called on to approve Vista's proposal as requested, along with conditions, conditions which include Vista agreeing to grandfather in all existing uses within the affected territory without consideration of those existing uses involving public nuisance and the landlocking of our property for lack of sewage disposal. LAFCO is required to adopt feasible mitigation measures within the agency's jurisdiction. I ask that LAFCO consider the statement at the top of its website, its stated responsibility under state law to facilitate orderly growth while protecting against premature conversion of open space resources. We've destroyed most of the feasible options here. There are feasible options left with available open space property to provide for repair to our septic system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rawl. Appreciate it. Just real quickly, Keen, Mr. Rawl submitted quite lengthy correspondence to us concerning this equal issue. Could you just speak to that briefly?
I will speak to it, and if need be, Holly could expand on it. But in this particular case, the city of Vista, serves as lead agency, and in doing so, made a exemption finding under Class 19. In LAFCO's role as a responsible agency, we believe Vista's determination is appropriate. Is it award-winning? Maybe not, but that's not what state law requires of LAFCO in this particular case. So as a disclosure, we've reviewed Vista's finding and agree with it. And then Holly, I can defer for more details.
Sure. That finding, the LAFCO's duty as a responsible agency to require more is really triggered primarily and almost exclusively when the lead agency has performed an EIR or issued a neg deck. When the lead agency has found an exemption, it does not trigger LAFCO's responsible agency duties unless LAFCO disagrees and decides to take on lead agency duty itself, which here staff has determined is not the appropriate route, and which I concur with, because essentially what LAFCO's lead agency duty is as to the sphere of influence amendment. And as for that, there's not any change to the baseline environmental condition. So I also want to just comment that grandfathering in existing legal uses does not wipe the slate clean for somebody that is currently perhaps has an illegal use going on, if they have a prior violation. The grandfathering does not wipe the slate clean for them. It only carries over whatever legal uses are happening right now. So it will not wipe that slate clean. And then one final issue to point out is LAFCO is limited in what it can condition as it regards to specific land use issues, because LAFCO does not have land use authority. And so in respecting that as well, we're confident in the CEQA determination.
Just, I got a quick question all around. I know we still have another public speaker, but if the land uses are allowed and we're saying, okay, Vista, you have to keep the current land uses, I guess that could change though. I mean, a different city council or somebody could come in with a general plan amendment or some sort of permit request for future changes. This isn't land use to perpetuity, is it? This is only for the immediate action. Is that correct?
Correct. It just maintains the baseline through this transition. The city council may choose to make changes going forward, but it'd be subject to its own processes.
Okay. I mean, Commissioner McKenzie, got a question?
Yes, probably a legal counsel. The speaker was talking about an additional or upcoming or potential discretionary permit that would give rise to additional conditions, but wouldn't that also transfer with or to the city? I think the issue seems to be with the grading and impacting his parcel that the county failed to realize when they approved the
permit. That's what I've been reading in the comments.
That's my understanding as well. And so in fact, should that landowner apply for any kind of discretionary permit, if this annexation is approved, then the city would have the opportunity at that time to condition it to correct the current condition, to require compliance with the original condition, et cetera. It would be up to the city at that point.
But it's a discretionary permit and not a ministerial permit, which is your building permit or that type of thing. That the adjacent property is impacting the existing septic.
Correct. That's my understanding.
I'm trying to figure out what discretionary permit could be forthcoming.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll get back to the public comment. Renee Cooper?
Morning, everyone. I would greatly appreciate if you could put the map back up there of the area. I'm Rainey Cooper, and I live in that particular area. I've been there for over 45 years. And I've watched the city of Vista absolutely.
Hang on, Renee, hang on. Okay, thank you.
If you were to draw a horizontal line between the largest area 2 and what was mentioned earlier was Stonegate. Stonegate is a completely gated, developed area that we tried to stop, but weren't successful, and they put them on the Buena Vista. The rest of us have septic systems, and to my knowledge, as I said, I've been there 45 plus years, no problem. But the city of Vista will come in, unfortunately, and not provide the infrastructure that we would need for all the development that they want to put in our area. They took it from a rural area to a semi-rural area, and they don't support the residents with why we moved there. And there's very few areas in Vista left where we can still have some animals. I've got a small vineyard. It goes on and on. So I would like to know or request, and I did through the city of Vista as well several months ago, a circulation study, because they will use for the Shadow Ridge that they put in and 1,200 open acres running right by my property and all these other properties for people to get to the freeway. So it'll just be a massive, and how would we find out, honestly, because I've been down to the county too, about what development is being planned for the acreage that is still open in the area that we're in? Because I'm seeing right now, a home's just being built and totally changing the landscape. And what the city of Vista has not done is to think ahead of the traffic. The roads in that area are narrow, winding roads with just gutters on each side. In the past week, I saw 2 cars just crashed at the bottom of the hill because they're going too fast on our rural roads. And they just keep putting in homes. They don't care. Well, then you've got to have the safe traffic flow. You've got to have schools. You have to have some public amenities. So my suggestion is, since Stonegate is already a developed gated community, and if they need to change with Buena Vista Sanitation District, go ahead, but why are you including the rest of us just north of that horizontal line where the Stonegate is? I'm totally opposed to that area anyway being taken, but I can see that there might be a reason for Stonegate because of all the homes that were put in there to change the sanitation system.
All right, take a quick question for you, Renee. Did the city of Vista reach out and have any sort of like a town hall or any sort of a meeting with residents?
They had, I was really surprised. They mentioned it just briefly once, and there were about, I'm going to say, 10 or 12 of us that spoke up for different neighborhoods right within this. And they chose not to even listen to us and just said, no, we just voted.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Can I ask what street she lives on? I was out there tooling around yesterday and
Miramar Drive.
it
I'm part of the
ended up
public.
in Oceanside.
Miramar Drive.
Miramar Drive.
Tootling around. That's let's see, we also, we have with us today also Vista Planning Director, John Connolly. That's, yeah, Connolly, to address, are you here today, John? You want to say a couple words on what's some of the concerns we're hearing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. City supports the staff recommendation. We reviewed all the conditions that are recommended by staff. We agreed with all of them. Mr. Rawl has a unique situation with his property that was unfortunately created by some oversight by county DEH when the adjacent property was built. We've acknowledged that. I've met with Mr. Rawl several times. We can't correct the situation as part of this action, but we have acknowledged the situation that his property is in. We flagged his property in our system, and we are fully prepared to address the situation when the time comes for a future discretionary action. With respect to the traffic issues and the comments about future development, the city has no intention of developing this area whatsoever. We intend to keep the 1 acre minimum zoning in place. There's no proposal in our general plan or at hand to change the circulation element to increase traffic on Mar Vista Drive or any of the other surrounding roadways. So we don't believe that the proposal is going to change much in the way of the existing condition, with the exception of private property owners that want to develop their property, which would be a future discretionary approval of the city.
Did you have anybody that wanted this to happen that lives there in these areas?
No. We have to solve the sewer problem, though, that we created in 2003 with the Stonegate development, and that's what we're doing. And the adjacent properties to the north are really part of the proposal because the state law provides us some flexibility with a proposal that's been submitted to include those properties. Had we not included those properties, we wouldn't be able to apply for the expedited island annexation process.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
It appears the chair's microphone is doing all the echoing, so I apologize for that. Yeah, I'll try to step back. I've got a couple comments I'd like to make on this one. I'm keen. Did you want to? I saw you grabbing the mic here.
Well, thank you, Chair Desmond. I just wanted to reiterate Priscilla's comments in her presentation that this is a unique proposal, as Director Connolly had mentioned. This is coming to you under the expedited island annexation proceedings. And as we outlined on page, what is 153 of your packet, there are these 8 findings that the commission ultimately is asked to make. And so long as you make or believe you can make these findings, state legislature not only directs you to approve this proposal, but waive protest proceedings. So in many respects, your discretion here is limited. As Commission Counsel has opined, we can condition approval, albeit with a significant restriction. We can't get involved in land use decisions. So staff is attesting that you can make all 8 findings. So that said, our recommendation is to approve with the discretion about conditions being a subject for the diets.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll just make a few comments just to kind of kick us off here. I really struggled with this, primarily because when I read it, there was no community buy-in. I understand islands, and when I was mayor of San Marcos, we had islands within the city, and I always thought that was kind of strange that we're county. But my approach to that, and even at the county level, is usually a community will come and ask for something, or ask to be annexed, or ask to be a part of it. The county, we incorporated the Vista Valley Center Parks District. It was the park district that asked, and they said to us, "Hey, we want to be part of the county." Borrego Springs, we got the same thing going with their fire department and other areas. And to me, it doesn't appear that the communities, if nobody wants this to happen, that's living there. And we do have a letter from Stonegate, I guess their HOA, they went out and got representation. There's 36 homes and they're not in favor of the annexation. We got a letter from Mrs. Foote, and then I guess there was more correspondence that came over the weekend. I didn't see that. Was that, do you know if that was pro or con or what?
If I may, there are two additional emails, both just opposing the annexation, but those will be forwarded to you.
Would have been nice to have those before the hearing. I'm sorry, but we need to have those when they come in. So anyway, I agree that probably because of the island and everything else, it just makes sense that this should be annexed. But I think there needs to be more buy-in or education or outreach to the community as to why this is happening and maybe the pros and cons, and maybe the city of Vista can work with the community and say, here's why it's good for you. Here's back and forth and get more of an education or buy-in from the community as to the logic behind it and why it's happening. So I really think, hang on, my staff gave me some notes on this, that I want to make sure.
John, did you have some further comments?
Well, hang on a second.
Oh, sorry.
Hang on a second, Barry.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm jumping in.
Okay, but I just like them to, maybe meet and confer and have more community engagement, because with not one entity wanting this to come forward, that's always been my kind of measure of, do we go forward with any annexation? But if the people don't want it, even Ramona, when we took over the fire district there, that was a vote of the people. They actually decided on that. I get that it makes sense, but I do think I'd like to see more staff time or more time spent with the constituents, explaining the pros and cons, giving them more explanation on traffic and everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion for alternative 2 to consider continue the consideration of to a future meeting, provided staff work with the city of Vista and with the people in this community that are be affected, explaining to them more of the pros and cons, more of, is the city of Vista going to improve the roads? Is the city of Vista going to put a park in nearby? Is the city of Vista, what's the buy-in or the incentive for the people to want to make this move? I mean, it makes all the sense of the world just because of the geography, but I think the constituents and the people living there need more community engagement and buy-in. So that would be, and I have a second. So thank you very much. As mayors, you sort of get it. It's like we got to make constituents, but thank you. I'm sorry, Barry, who did you call on?
I think John had
Okay.
John had a follow-up, but maybe Renee would like to follow up.
Well, hang on a second. Let's get the rest of the commissions before we go. Okay.
I just wanted to address your comment about community participation. We did send a letter out to all the affected residents early on. We've been dealing with this application for more than 5 years now. We've held community meetings. We had a virtual community meeting. Unfortunately, during COVID, it had to be virtual. We also held a public hearing at City Council. So we have heard from the residents. Unfortunately, there are a number of residents out there that just distrust government. They distrust the city. They think we have some alternative plan in mind to develop the area. And I can tell you right now, Mr. Chairman, I could have 15 more community meetings. I don't think I'm going to change those people's opinion. I certainly respect the idea of the commission to have more community input, but I can't promise that at the end of that process, I'm going to have any more buy-in from the residents than I already have.
Well, the fact that you got not one person, to me,
we're solving a problem that was created in 2003 with the Stonegate development. We tried to solve the developer of that property signed an irrevocable offer of annexation to annex into the city before the property was developed. Unfortunately, we didn't act on that. And after the property was subdivided, we weren't able to act on it still. We had to go back to the residents and ask for a vote. In our opinion, there's no negative impact from this other than a small financial impact to the property owners for lighting and landscape maintenance that's assessed annually. Other than that, the land uses don't change. The city has no intent to develop it. We're going to leave the area alone. We just need to solve our problem that we created for ourselves in 2003.
Okay, I'm just asking for a little more time and
Sure.
engagement.
Of course, thank
on
you.
that. So try harder, I guess. Is what it is. Sending letters may not be enough, but do we have any other commissioner comments? I see a hand up, but Commissioner Kate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the representative from the city of Vista. He answered a couple of my questions in terms of what actually is done and the timeline for the application. Did I hear him correctly in that this has been in the works for 5 years now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and he did say that the council has held a number of meetings, they've done their own forums and all the like. I guess, I appreciate what the chair has stated, but silence does not mean opposition either. And, having been a mayor and my time on the council, there've been a number of projects that have been forward and all we hear from our opponents. We don't hear anybody in support. Doesn't mean it's not out there or exists. I appreciated his comments in terms of commitment of no intention to develop or any of that like. Obviously, councils change, elections happen, people have other ideas, but at this point, I appreciate them trying to move forward and correct a mistake that's in the past with no ancillary negative impacts to anybody. In terms of this, it's almost like just a paper correction more than anything else. So I wouldn't be supportive of the motion. I'm comfortable in proceeding ahead. I don't know expectations of what they want. If they produce one letter in support, does that suffice? Additionally, if this motion does pass, I would hope that there would be a time frame attached to by which the reconsideration is brought forward. That way, this is not just out in the ether in perpetuity. So that concludes my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great comments. I appreciate it. Commissioner Kate. I don't see any other hands up. And like I said, I do think we should move forward with this at some point in time, and I do think more outreach would be beneficial, and we could bring it back 6 months or something with some sort of time frame. But
Chair,
yes,
I only have one comment, and that's in the recommendations under where, I don't know where it is. It's on 171, where all legally permitted land uses, I would like to put in there also structures. And I talked to Mr. Conley and he has no problem with that. I guess we've had a number of conversations with various homeowners out there, and it's indicated that that would also be grandfathered in.
but I guess only structures that are legally permitted and to be there, not ones that were not.
Well, that have been allowed by the county.
Okay. Well, I think we could put let's see how this motion goes, and then I guess if you want to have that as an add-on coming back.
I just want to put that out there now.
Okay. Wow.
And when this does come back, could we have better mapping? I was out there yesterday trying to figure out where are the areas where they were being graded and so forth. And from this map, I needed to have my Thomas Brothers map, but I didn't have one anymore. So, our mapping is getting less and less rather than better and better.
Okay, well, that's a note to staff. Okay. I don't see any other comments. We have no other speakers on this thing. We do have a motion and a second to bring this item back after some more work and engagement with the community.
Is there a timeline that you're proposing to bring this back?
6 months. So around 6 months. I don't know. I don't really, whatever it takes for this, to get this done. So I think that's a reasonable time frame, 180 days.
Sorry, Chair Desmond, this is Mary Salas. Since I'm let in as Samantha, I can't raise my hand.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, so, I share Chris's concerns as well, is that sometimes we just have to come to those decisions. And so I heard mention of a timeline of bringing it back in 6 months. I think really that's too far out as well. If there's a possibility that perhaps if you could bring it back in 1 or 2 months, I think there just has to be a resolution on the issue.
How about 90 days?
Well, that's what I inquired about, bring it back within 6 months. So if we can have two meetings with the residents out there next week, you can bring it back
Okay, well, I'd be happy to make it 90 days, I guess, that seems a bit more south.
How about within?
Okay, thank you.
Within 90 days, okay. All right, any other comments? Anybody else that's hand challenged here? Okay.
No, I concur. I'm glad we're moving it to 90 days.
Okay.
So it's a shorter period.
Just so we have a clean record, does the second agree to that modification?
All right, we have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Desmond,
Aye.
Commissioner McNamara,
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie. Aye. Commissioner Vanderlyn,
Yes.
Commissioner Willis,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas.
Yes.
Sorry, Commissioner Salas,
Yes.
Commissioner Kate,
No.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
What's the total?
we have 6 in favor, 2 opposed. The motion passes. That was for alternate 2.
All right, thank you very much. We're moving on now to our business calendar. This is items 7A, B, and C. These 3 business items, beginning with 7A. Keen, do you have any lead up to 7A here?
Well, my lead up is to hand this item over to Priscilla for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Keen. Thank you, commissioners. So as mentioned, before the commission is part 2 of a 2-part municipal service review on the Escondido region, and specific to covering the city of Escondido. It follows our earlier work in part 1, where we covered the special districts in the region, and it is being presented today in its draft form for initial discussion and feedback before we presumably proceed forward with a formal 45-day public review and comment period. So today in particular, we're looking for commissioners' commentary on the content and scope before we start working on a final version, with the expectation that would come back in October, or as early as October. As mentioned, part 2 is specific to the city and continues our task that began pre-pandemic to prepare a municipal service review on the region to assess the level, range, and adequacy of municipal services, and then to subsequently apply the information in 3 distinct ways. So the first being to use the municipal service review to inform our related task of updating spheres of influence every 5 years. 2, to use the municipal service review to inform jurisdictional changes that come forward in the next 5 years. And then 3, if merited, use the municipal service review to justify initiating our own reorganizations involving special districts. And so with this context aside, and for the commissioners and public members who have been following this municipal service review, you'll know that the planning project has taken a unique path for reasons noted within the accompanying agenda report. And specifically, part 2 has been further divided into 2 subparts or documents, as shown up on this next slide. So the larger of the 2 documents is the municipal service review that was prepared by the city via Concordia Homes. And this MSR covers the full scope of city operations with a data window between fiscal years 2014 to 2018. Further, there's the smaller of the 2 documents, which is the addendum, and this has been prepared by LAFCO staff, which focuses in on the core municipal functions of elevated interest to the commission, those being water, wastewater, and fire protection, as well as going into their finances, and with an updated data window of between 2017 and 2021. The addendum also importantly includes key conclusions and recommendations in step with satisfying the commission's task to make a range of determinations under both statute as well as adopted policy. And because of the addendum's reconciling nature to incorporate and build upon the city's report with our own findings, it is our suggestion and premise that the commission focus its attention to the addendum. Now, to begin summarizing the agency as well as the addendum, I have some baseline information on the next slide with respect to the city of Escondido. So the city incorporated in 1888 and is a full service municipality headlined by directly providing community planning, fire protection, parks and recreation, police protection, water and wastewater. It spans 37 square miles or 24,000 acres and has a resident population of over 150,000. Now I'm going to jump into our key conclusions as well as our recommendations with the invitation to go into further detail. But with respect to key themes, we have 9 as listed on the screen. I'll be going over the 4 that are in bold. So to begin, the report represents San Diego LAFCO's inaugural municipal service review dedicated to the city of Escondido and serves as a dual introduction, not only for the city and its constituents on this rather unfamiliar process, but also for the commission to be presented with information on the city relative to their core functions, notably at depths previously unvisited. Number 3, with respect to general fund stresses and high debt levels, the fiscal analysis as part of the MSR signals that the city of Escondido's general fund is becoming imbalanced with the rate of new expenses surpassing the rate of new revenues by more than 1/5, as well as the inability to satisfy its own reserve policy in 4 out of the 5 years that have been covered. Number 5, with respect to growth challenges and the idea that LAFCO focuses in on, which is affordable housing. Escondido has experienced modest population growth during the addendum period, however, have fallen short on generating new housing relative to new growth and made evident by a shortfall of 64 annual housing units compared to the need to build 225 annual units to keep up with the expected population growth. And number 7, making the city whole. The city of Escondido has over a dozen islands within their sphere of influence that are either completely surrounded or substantially surrounded by their jurisdictional boundaries. And these islands represent service inefficiencies as well as raise social justice considerations for an estimated and cumulative estimated population of more than 12,000. Given this, it would be appropriate for Escondido and LAFCO to work together and coordinate on gradually making the city whole. And so many of these conclusions or takeaways also find their way into our recommendations, with all 10 showing on the following 3 slides, but I will be going into 4, and those are highlighted in blue. So number 1 is to prioritize and direct growth in the region to the city of Escondido as an appropriate urban center. So given its location and proximity to transportation corridors paired with the city's role as a full service municipality, it would be reasonable to prioritize and direct growth in the region to the city. Number 3, and as noted in conclusion number 3, given the stresses that are experienced in the city's general fund, we would recommend that future jurisdictional changes demonstrate de minimis impacts to their general fund. And number 6, which draws from conclusion number 8, with respect to assessing the relationship between the city of Escondido and Rincon del Diablo Municipal Water District. And this recommendation is also consistent with staff's recommendation in part 1 of the 2-part MSR, which affirms the recommendation to proceed with adding a governance study of the 2 agencies onto the work plan, and in doing so, independently assess options to consolidate, given the agencies have overlapping boundaries as well as common service functions. And lastly, number 9, which we received some comments on, and we can go into further detail if the commission prefers. Proceeding with a limited sphere of influence update for the city of Escondido, but focusing in on aligning the sphere wherever practical, and specifically with parcel boundaries, roads, or other geographic markers which have adjusted and or emerged since last commission action in 2003. And this means that we would defer an otherwise merited comprehensive sphere of influence update for the city to a future municipal service review. However, we are recommending establishing 1 or more special study areas, which would provide the affected areas eligibility to proceed forward in the next 5 years with a request for an actual amendment to the sphere without necessitating a new municipal service review. And this includes a special study area for the Harvest Hills project, previously known as Safari Highlands. And so with that, I conclude my summary of the municipal service review. But before turning it over, I do want to thank staff from the city who is present today. Adam Feinstone is here, as well as Fire Chief Rick Boat, for their collaboration over the past year on, again, a very unique process in developing both the MSR and addendum. And then I also want to thank Steve Abbott and Brian Brady for all of their help in the preparation of the addendum. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you very much. Barry, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. For the special study areas, it would be really helpful to visualize this if the maps are in here.
Yes.
Could you please make that a point to put in a few maps?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Willis. Dude's going to go ahead. Oh, there we go. We have it up there. So the one on the left just focuses in on the full sphere and jurisdictional boundary, and then also relative to the special study area. And then the Safari Highlands on the right is further zoomed into with respect to the sphere as well as jurisdictional boundary for the city.
Could you include it in your pages? Somehow.
I should have done that.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to, as an amendment for next time.
Absolutely.
This commission likes maps.
Well, everyone's
the more the
not
merrier.
familiar with the entire county area.
Let's see, do we have any other commissioner questions on the presentation before we go to public hearing? Commissioner Drake.
Oh, good morning, Chair Desmond. I got just a brief comment. Rincon Water wants to thank the LAFCO staff and the city staff for proceeding with the Escondido MSR. The MSR mentions Rincon Water 25 times. It also has an addendum that mentions us 25 times. And so clearly they would like our input in the next 45-day review period. We're very pleased to do that. Also, I want to appreciate the comments that Priscilla made in the amendment and in the original MSR about the relationship between the city and Rincon concerning our continuing cooperation and mutual aid between our agencies. One thing in particular that is a part of this is the fact that we, Rincon, provide a continuous supply of water for the city of Escondido during the CWA shutdowns of raw water. So we provide treated water to Escondido for about 2 weeks every year for the last 2 decades. And that's just one example of not duplicating a public investment of citizens' funds by being able to share resources. So we have a good and cooperative relationship, and we hope that that will continue. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Drake. Erica, do we have any public comments?
We do have, Laura Hunter on Zoom.
Okay, Laura, if you can bring her up.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Great. So good morning, commissioners. My name is Laura Hunter. I'm with Sierra Club North County Group. In 2003, the Escondido Planning Commission voted on a project called Valley View Estates, proposed on the same land, pretty much the same configuration, looked very much like Harvest Hills. The commission voted unanimously to deny the project and to suspend all future efforts to bring the site into the city's SOI, due in part to, quote, significant and unmitigable hazardous impacts. Here we are almost 20 years later and nothing has changed. This project is no more defensible now than it was then. We know you need to get the MSR done for Escondido, and we support the staff addendum, but with the removal of 9B. 9B would allow piecemeal consideration of Harvest Hills, and a major change like this should be part of a comprehensive review. We sent you reports that detail insurmountable obstacles to permitting this project. They demonstrate the severe threat to neighboring communities, including San Diego Zoo Safari Park. The fire risk assessment by Rody and Associates found the current plan grossly deficient and made some expensive fix recommendations. The Griffin Cove transportation analysis looked at several scenarios and found gridlock, stranding, and failures of evacuation. And even with the Rody recommendations, quote, none of the evacuation scenarios provide sufficient road capacity to allow for safe evacuation. Our own chief, Rick Vogt, responded to the Rody report with 9 major areas. Former LAFCO of concern. Former LAFCO Commissioner Diane Jacobs said it best at your very dais. She said this project is just an example of jurisdictional density shopping. The problems of Harvest Hills are insurmountable. The project is dangerous and it should not be fast-tracked in any way and only considered as part of a comprehensive review. So we ask you to remove 9B. I just want to say on a personal note, that please don't think this is about just rejecting big projects. It's not. I worked very hard on some very big projects. I hope Mayor Salas can vouch for me on this. One of them broke ground last week on the Chula Vista Bayfront. This is simply about the indefensibility of this project in this location. Thank you very much for considering my comments.
Thank you, Laura. Do you have another, Erica, you want to come next?
I don't have any other registered speakers, but I do have a live email comment. You're ready for that.
I see some hands up, but they're not registered speakers. We can go ahead and call it. Okay, all right. I see Dara Swarwanka.
Yes, hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we have you.
Okay, excellent. I'd like to reiterate Ms. Hunter's comments specifically about the elimination of 9B. I am a resident in the adjacent area to Safari Highlands, Harvest Hills, and I've been a resident since 2011. And I've seen this project rear its ugly head time after time. And the residents are overwhelmingly opposed to this project because of a number of issues. I also sit on the school board, the elected school board of San Pasquale Union School, which also is in that area. I can tell you I've been evacuated numerous times as a community member. And I can tell you the most recent time trying to get into the neighborhood. My husband was out of town. I was trying to get into the neighborhood. It was just a voluntary evacuation at that time. I was trying to go back. I had kids in my car, trying to get back to get my pets out of the house. And it took me over an hour to get in. Now, again, when you consider all of the people, under a mandatory evacuation trying to get out, it is just a dangerous situation. So again, I've seen this project try to make one excuse after another to sort of change the process of standing in line and having their project reviewed fairly. I'm still waiting for the final EIR. Again, this is just not a great project, and I ask that 9B be eliminated. And again, when they have any kind of project that is reasonable, to just get in line and go through the regular process from the next review period. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Darren. I see Dan Silver's has his hand up as well. Dan?
Good morning, Chair Desmond, members of the commission. I'm Dan Silver, Endangered Habitats League. I'm here to reiterate the comments of the other speakers. The Harvest Hills sphere of influence change would have major service ramifications and obviously huge public safety issues. Piecemeal consideration, fast tracking via a special study area is just inappropriate for a proposal of this nature. It should be part of a comprehensive service review. This project has been going on a long time. There's no problem in having it part of the normal, regular LAFCO process. Thank you very much.
All right, Dan, thank you. Keen, 9B.
9B it is. So, and the premise here, and it's an important premise, is every 5 years, LAFCO looks and updates spheres of influence by way of certainly legislative prompt and our own practices. When we look and update a sphere, we are in effect looking to lock that designation in over the next 60 months. So with that premise in mind, when we look at the current sphere for the city of Escondido, we see some modest adjustments that should be made now, but we also, and this speaks to 9B, see the potential merits of some adjustments within the next 60 months. They're not right, or there's not enough information right now to make that determination, but we do see some merits. So therein lies the wisdom, at least with staff, to create at least one, and there may be others, but at least one special study area for the Harvest Hills project, which would allow the city and or the developer to come forward with a proposal. And at that time, LAFCO would take up the specific merits of the action. And as the speakers have alluded to, they may, and they may have done reasonably, concluded that there are impacts and demerits to bringing this into the city. What I'm saying to the commission is we just haven't done that analysis ourselves, and it's not the time to do that. What we're suggesting is leave the option open for the city and the developer to come forward to LAFCO over the next 60 months.
Okay, Mayor McNamara.
I have a couple comments, but I have one question for you, Keen. Can you give the audience, when you say merits, what are you talking about?
So there are merits that relate to specific factors under state law that come into play anytime you look at a boundary change, and they include adequacy of fire services, among other things. And there's about 24 other factors, but because fire has been brought up, I wanted to say that that would be independently looked at by LAFCO.
Well, if I may, I think when you use the word merit, it suggests that the project itself has some merit. You've heard lots of people, myself included, that struggle to see where that project would be viable from various angles. So I'm still, I guess, a little bit confused from a LAFCO prism what that word merit means.
Thank you, Commissioner McNamara. So to be specific, LAFCO is tasked with promoting orderly growth and development, and in particular, housing. We know that the current developer is suggesting housing be put on this site. There is merit, therefore, with LAFCO, not to suggest it's the final conclusion, but the reality is this commission is in the business of facilitating orderly growth in urban development. We have not reached a conclusion as to whether housing on this site specific to capacities of Escondido is appropriate, but for the purposes of a placeholder, a special study area, I think we've reached that threshold, at least your executive officer's opinion.
Can I ask you a couple more questions, not to take up too much time? So what you're saying then is you're not saying that the project has merit, you're just saying that it's under the charter, I guess, of LAFCO, that if somebody wants to build houses, you need to look at it. You may come back with a conclusion that it's not a good project. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And does this, what we're 9B, does that eliminate at some future date a full MSRs? We've heard some of the speakers request.
It does not eliminate that possibility, no.
Okay. All right, thank you. I also wanted to say, I think they said this earlier, I struggle to see, quote, the merit of this project, but I'm willing to have it officially reviewed by LAFCO and at a future day, a more comprehensive review.
As the mayor of Escondido, and this is an Escondido item, do you have a motion?
Can I ask questions?
Yeah, we'll get to that, but is there no?
Yeah, I'll move that we move forward with the MSR.
Okay. Do we have a second anywhere?
I thought this was a read. I didn't know that we were making an actual move forward on this.
So there is no formal action. However, this per practice is an opportunity for you to hit pause. And so I think the motion and the spirit is to allow staff to go forward with a formal public comment and review period. If, however, you felt there needs to be more work, this is the time you hit pause and tell us so.
So it's to move forward with the MSR, to go to the public.
That's the motion.
You want a second it or no?
Not at this point.
Okay, I'll second. Okay. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, we have one more live email comment. I forgot to bring Erica. Thank you.
This comment is from Robert Leiter. It says, "To Honorable LAFCO Board, I'm not able to attend today's meeting. However, I would like to support the recommendations of the Sierra Club North County Group, Endangered Habitats League, and San Pasqual Valley Preservation Alliance to remove recommendation 9B from the staff addendum for agenda item 7A. In addition to the reasons stated by other comments for removing recommendation 9B, I think it is important to consider the requirements of California Senate Bill 379, which states that all local governments must update the safety elements of their general plans no later than January 1st, 2022. To, among other things, address the impacts of climate change on the frequency and severity of wildfires, along with its impacts on other types of safety and health hazards. To my knowledge, the city of Escondido has not adopted an update to the safety element of its general plan as required by SB 379. I think it would be prudent for the LAFCO board to remove recommendation 9B on the staff addendum until the city of Escondido has completed this update. Best regards, Robert A. Lighter.
All right, thank you, Erica. Do we have any other commissioner comments? Joe McKenzie.
Yeah, I have some real concerns about the recommendation. Recommendation 1 is to prioritize and direct growth in the region to the city of Escondido. And I quickly saw on the screen that it looks like that shaded part is going to be the study area. I have no idea where the study area is or where number 2 study area is. I don't know whether we're looking at 2 acres.
Can we bring up
200.
the map too? So on the map itself, there's only one special study area that we have identified to date, although others may come up as we go through the public comment period. But the one that we have identified is this Harvest Hills project site, and that's what's shaded to the east of the existing city sphere of influence.
Which is not directing development to the city. This is on the very outskirts.
Well, I guess that's a point of view, directing development towards the city, both internally and to a potential future boundary, is I think the intent of staff's comment, that herein lies an area that is a
open space,
well-situated location on the, I'm not talking about project side, I'm talking about recommendation number 1 about directing growth towards the city. The city's full service, it's located along transportation corridors. From LAFCO's perspective, if development is going to occur in North County, we should direct it towards the city of Escondido as opposed to perhaps some unincorporated areas.
Okay, so this recommendation basically is saying anything along the edges, outlying, as long as it's adjacent to the city.
Yeah, and let's flip the equation a bit. What if the county was processing a development right outside the city's sphere of influence? We would say, if you're going to do development, it should be in the city, especially if it's located within or adjacent to the sphere. So there are dual perspectives on the comment of directing development towards the city.
Okay. And quite frankly, without any maps within the staff report that I read a couple times, I have no idea where the boundaries are proposed to be changed for the sphere. And there's really no real discussion on what we propose for this update. And I cannot support moving this forward and not requiring this development to do a full NSR. Because my concern is, if they do an EIR, they have a fire studies, probably hopefully is required. The fire study says no problem, we can get everybody out, plus all of the existing residents, no problem. And we look at it and disagree. What's our position at that point in time?
Well, if the commission were to disagree, the boundary change would not go forward. But just as some context here, LAFCO staff does not presume the city of Escondido is definitely going to bring us a project which involves, a subdivision approval, pre-zoning. That's for Commissioner McNamara with his city hat and the other 4 council members to decide. What we are presuming is there's a chance that this comes forward in the next 5 years. Let's acknowledge that, as we have it at LAFCO in terms of practice. Create a special study area to telegraph out loud, because when people look at our maps, in my estimation, we're doing a benefit of signaling to the world, hey, something's going on in this corner of the world. Check in with us.
My only concern is that they're going to assume that there's a fast track. And that seems to be what it is. And when you have that many organizations opposed to this, and now that I know where the area is, this has been around for a long time. And it's out there on unless they are going to be putting in roadways into the city proper, I can't see fast tracking this project. And by putting it into the study area without requiring an NSR, it seems to me to be fast tracking and almost saying, hey, go for it.
Yeah, if I could, Chair Desmond, so the term fast track is not applicable in staff's mind. It's acknowledging the world as it's going on right now, that there is a developer who is slowly but nevertheless proceeding with some type of project to the city of Escondido. We're not presupposing LAFCO approval here. What we're presupposing, again, is that this is on the horizon. And perhaps when we come back, if the commission is agreeable for us to go forward with a public comment period, I certainly am hearing all this input. We will do more vetting of this recommendation, and perhaps have an adjustment, perhaps not, but have an adjustment to how we are approaching it, because I am hearing the feedback from the commission.
Maybe we should continue this for 90 days for more information.
I think that's what we're doing though, is we're already asking for more information. That's what this whole thing is about for this particular. Well, it's going out to a public hearing and then coming back. So we are asking for more information. It's not a decision today on this. And basically, I don't think it's a fast track either. It's just, we need housing in San Diego County. And here's a potential spot. We're not saying yes or no, but and it seems to be the push that housing should be in or near urban areas. And that's what this piece of property is. This isn't a blessing. This is just we're looking at it. And if somebody brings a project forward, then I think we would look at the merits of it, not necessarily at this point in time. We're just acknowledging it's there.
Can I ask Mayor McNamara a question on what's out there? Isn't that area very similar to Mar Vista, where it's adjacent to a very rural, large lot, single family homes?
Correct. And I have no problems with the Sierra Club's comments about its viability. I agree with it. I think what Keenan is pushing is that we just can't keep talking about it, saying, I think it's good, I think it's bad. What we need to do is go through a review process. Here, and we're really talking about two. That's why I asked that clarifying question. One is we move forward with the MSR. I mean, there are some other things in there. For example, the water district relationship with the city water. And there's a number of others as you read through it. And I think what we need to do is get more information, as the chair said, and we get that by allowing LAFCO to move forward. And we allow LAFCO to move forward in two ways. One is we have the, correct me, help me with my term scheme, but you're the first review of the Harvest Hills, and then potentially we will do, if required, a more thorough review of it.
Correct. So, and this applies to any proposal that comes before you, but if LAFCO receives a proposal, again, it hasn't happened yet, but if the city of Escondido, and their staff is over there in case anyone wants to ask them questions, but if a proposal comes forward, LAFCO can evaluate that proposal, the merits, demerits at that point. And if you conclude, we need more information here, we just don't have it, we can trigger a full MSR, we can trigger an addendum. There are options.
Can I say one more thing, if I may? This, right now, the city of Escondido does not own that land. So while the caveat, and I've got Adam back there, Adam, the caveat is that if the council would approve it, they would have to approve it with the caveat that LAFCO would approve an annexation, right? And the council hasn't even come up to the council yet. So I think there's, I think what we need to do is our due diligence, right? And to go through this, and we're talking about, do I think it's a bad project? Yeah, I do. I mean, and it for a number of reasons, environment, costs, fire hazards. But my opinion, that's my opinion. I think we need to have staff go through the due diligence process as the city staff is going through the due diligence. I mean, one of the early proposals was we couldn't even afford the firehouse that it would require. But I don't want to jump to conclusions on this. I'd rather have the staff go through it and analyze a more fleshed out product that has community feedback.
Commissioner Willis.
What was the original motion? I'm sorry.
To approve the item.
To approve.
Moving
To
forward.
go forward with the MSR process.
Oh, okay. So this isn't the final analysis?
No.
Okay, got it.
No, they're not gonna do the MS,
Okay.
so you're not doing.
I see Commissioner Drake, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to agree with both Keen and the mayor that there are options to have in the future. And I was a resident of Escondido for 40 years. I served for 9 years in the Planning Commission. And one of the things we really always wanted to do was to find a way to encourage redevelopment in the central part of the city. It is very valuable to reuse the infrastructure and the roads and everything else that have been built there. And the whole area east of Center City Parkway is ripe for redevelopment. And you can see apartment after apartment being developed along Center City Parkway. And so there is a much better environmental alternative of all the alternatives we have to have. So I just want to make the comment that it's a much better choice to be able to redevelop what's already been done in the city rather than reaching to the far east to try to do something with millions of dollars of new infrastructure. That's a personal opinion. I just want to put it on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Drake. Just so I don't see any other commissioner comments or hands up. Erica, do you have any? No? Okay. We have no other speakers. We have no emails to read or anything else. We do have a motion and a second on the floor to approve and move forward with the MSR process. I just want to, before we do that, my hat's off. I know there's a lot of details, a lot of work that go into these MSRs, and LAFCO staff did a great job with this. But one of the things, and it's not so much about this MSR, but it's basically about growth and who's in charge of growth and where growth goes in the county. Sandag was mentioned. The city of Escondido, in my mind, should serve as their own land use municipal service area authority for the area. It's the city of Escondido should, and then any other city within their own jurisdictions. And then, Akeen, as you said earlier, that LAFCO is in charge of orderly growth and urban development. We encourage that. But yet we see also in Sandag's 2021 plan that they've got urban areas or potential transportation hubs that they've got throughout. To me, it's just a little confusing. We have many conflicting, I guess, ideas from different agencies throughout the county as to who's doing what and directing the growth where. So could you come back later, not on this item, I'm not putting it towards a motion, but with some alternatives and kind of who's on first and who's in charge of where the growth goes in the county and their different roles, and maybe it's everybody, but it just seems there's a lot of hands in this pot as to where growth goes.
There are a lot of hands in that pot, and yes, we will come back with some thoughts about the relationship between how our recommendations play out and specifically Sandag and go from there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, seeing no other speakers, no other comments, we have a motion and a second on this item. Here, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Desmond?
Aye.
Commissioner McNamara?
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie?
No.
Commissioner Vanderland?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Yes.
Commissioner Kate is absent. Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
so we have 6 in favor, 2 opposed. I'm sorry, 1 opposed, 1 absent. The motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Good discussion on that. Next item is 7B. Dean?
I will handle this item, although I may defer to Priscilla for some of the details, but it comes to you by way of the matchmaking skills of Chair Desmond's staff, in particular Hunter McDonald. And Hunter got us in contact with county planning services. The aforementioned and attended Davia Lynch. And so in those discussions, we come up with a proposed grant that we would like the commission to approve as a co-applicant. This grant is for $500,000 with the Department of Conservation, and it would do a couple of things. One, it would certainly build on the existing grant work that we are doing in tracking agricultural trends in San Diego County, but then it would go to the next step. It would involve some cost benefit analysis on specific crops and emerging crops here in San Diego County, and then look to provide some gap analysis as to what local government could do to help bridge any economic shortfalls, all with the idea of our shared interest at LAFCO and at the county of sustainable agriculture. So we're very excited to come forward with this request that you authorize your role as a co-applicant. I know Chair Desmond will be taking this item up as a supervisor in the next few weeks. The one item of note, there is a 10% matching contribution. So county has agreed to basically split that down the middle with LAFCO. So on our end, that would mean $25,000 or about 200 hours of staff time over a 2-year period. Certainly something that we can absorb in our budget. And again, it would be for a good use. So with that, we're looking for your approval today.
Was that a motion?
Yes, I approve that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McKenzie, a second by Mr. Willis. So is it, okay. And I also want to thank LAFCO and the county PDS staff and Hunter McDonald, my staff, under Keen's and Davia's leadership, working together preparing this. Actually, it's a Sustainable Agriculture Lands Conservation Program. This is a grant application. It's an excellent opportunity for us to kind of drill down the root causes of some of our declining agricultural trends in the county and find out realistic means of helping our struggling farmers. I would like to note for as Keen brought up, I'm bringing this item forward to the Board of Supervisors on August 17th for their approval and buy-in, and then splitting those costs for the matching dollars. And then we're looking for the authorization to authorize our planning and development services to accept and apply for these grant dollars. So thanks for all the great work that's been done. Excited to see this get underway. I appreciate the motion in the second. I see no other speakers online. Do we have, Erica, do you have any other speakers?
No, but I think Andy trying to raise.
Andy.
Yes, Chair Desmond, just a question. Will this study look at water usage as part of the of what's going on here with all the things we've talked about in terms of especially the building and all of that, the lack of coordination from agency to agency within the county? We seem to keep building, and what we're hearing on the other side is we don't have enough water to support what we already have. So my concern
depends on a specific grant, but I could only assume that water is a huge issue when it comes to agriculture. So that it will be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, call roll, please.
Commissioner Desmond,
Aye.
Commissioner McNamara,
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderlyn,
Aye.
Commissioner Willis,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Yes.
Commissioner Kate is absent, Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
There are 7 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 absent. The motion passes.
All right, thank you, Erica. Thank you, everyone. Next item is 7C.
Thank you. I'm going to, this is a tag team. Carol Neiman's going to lead us off, and then we're going to hear from Adam Wilson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yeah, so I would just like to briefly introduce item 7C to you, and before I hand it over to our consultant, Adam Wilson, to provide some details on this item. So just to inform you, this item is for the Commission to consider taking formal action to form and task an advisory committee to help sync up LAFCO and the Resource Conservation District's activities going forward. So on that note, I'd like to invite Adam up to speak to give you guys some more additional details. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Desmond, fellow Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a very brief overview of today's item. Real quickly, I've been your consultant for the last 18 months, and your executive officer earlier this year tasked me with a duty to provide some education and outreach to the 3 resource conservation districts in this region to get their input and interest in forming an ad hoc committee to address some key issues that were identified in a municipal service review that your board adopted back in February 2021. To date, I've met with the 3 resource conservation districts individually and have met with them collectively. And the feedback that was provided is that there is a general interest in forming this ad hoc on addressing the issues that were identified in the report, and then also some additional opportunities that they may see fit to provide the services that they do to this region. Maybe the largest takeaway too is that the world of RCDs and how they provide their services has drastically changed over the years. In fact, most of the RCDs up and down the state of California were formed back in the 1940s. And they were formed for a sole purpose for soil erosion and flood control only. But in today's world, RCDs are doing a vast array of services and programs that include expanded services in resource conservation, whether that be wildlife or habitat. And then also they're in the industries and worlds of fire, such as wood chipping programs, water, such as irrigation and water efficiency, and agricultural, such as community gardens. And so, again, there was general interest and support to form this ad hoc committee with the goal, as Carol indicated, to aim the current practices and align the services that they provide today with LAFCO's current statutes, policies, and procedures. And so with that, it leads to the recommendations before you, which do, if you could quickly bring up on the screen. And there's 3 of them. And the first is to actually form a 9-member ad hoc committee. And that would consist of the 3 executive directors or general managers of the 3 specific RCDs. And then each one of those appointing either a staff member or board member for representation on the board. And then the 3 remaining members would be at large, representing, as I indicated, the water, fire, and ag communities. And again, those were identified because the services and programs that they provide today, those are the most predominant industries and stakeholders involved. So that 9-member ad hoc would then lead to recommendation number 2, which is a general framework of tasking what they would do. And this is mostly identifying the inconsistencies between their services and the jurisdictional boundaries that are out there. We want to align them and make sure that what the services they are providing are within those jurisdictions. And if not, we want to make sure that they're adhering to LAFCO law, most specifically to Government Code 56133, which basically says, hey, if you're providing new or extended services outside those boundaries, you need LAFCO approval to do so. There was also some additional opportunities to maybe include some memorandum of understandings. There was a lot of talk and general agreement from the 3 RCDs to provide a more cohesive working collaboration between those 3. So that could include finances and resources and grant writing and things of that nature. And so I would expect, and would lead to the 3rd recommendation, is some timelines. We'd have some quarterly updates to you. I would anticipate the group meeting a handful of times and obviously reporting back to you at the conclusion of their findings. So that completes my report, and I'm here for any additional comments or questions.
Thanks, Adam. Do we have any comments or questions on this? I think it's a great idea, getting the resource conservation districts, align and working together and all on the same page and towards better efforts. So thank you very much for your time and effort. Are they going to be, it's a quick question for you, and like an advisory to LAFCO, or is it just more for their own internal workings as resource districts?
I think I would answer that both. I mean, I think they've obviously they'd be advisory. We would meet. We would look at these key issues in the MSR and hopefully provide some findings or some recommendations to your body that would better help them provide their services and align them with LAFCO law. But also, like I said, they expressed some general interest to work more cohesively and collaboratively because the three districts that are represented in this region are vastly different in resources and staff. And so there could be some opportunities for them to have this working group be a model for them to provide their services in a more efficient manner.
All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Do we have any commissioner comments, questions, motion?
Well, I just wanted to clarify that this is going to be equal representation for each RC.
Correct. It'll be equal. There'll be one general or executive director from each RCD. Each RCD will then appoint either a staff or board member from their respective districts. And then there will be a representative from the ag, fire, and water community.
Okay.
You'll be appointing those.
Yeah, I'll be appointing those, but obviously I will be working collaboratively with the three RCDs and identifying those members and having full consensus of who those representatives will be.
And how will you make sure that there's cohesiveness on the sphere of influence issue? Making sure that they're all working together.
Yeah, I think they've already expressed to working together. In fact, the Greater Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego, they've already reached out to LAFCO staff about expanding their boundaries and working with us on identifying those areas of improvement to align their boundaries and services. I can tell you that all three of them have been very supportive of wanting to work together and see what they can do to work more collaboratively together to provide what they do to this region.
All right, is there a motion?
Did we already, I motioned that we move forward with our, did we already know?
No,
Okay.
you're it.
Okay.
Second, there's a second by Mayor McNamara. First by Commissioner Lewis. Let's see, I see Joel Anderson. Joel, you got a comment?
Well, I have happily made the motion. I spent a decade on an RCD, and I'll tell you, it's going to save us a lot of time and effort having somebody coordinate them because they're always fighting over turf. So this is I think this is a terrific motion, and I'm happy to support it.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. I don't see any other discussion or hands. Give a roll call, please.
Commissioner Desmond.
Aye.
Commissioner McNamara.
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderlyn.
Aye.
Commissioner Willis.
Aye.
Commissioner Salas.
Aye.
Commissioner Kate is absent. Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
We have 7 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 absent. The motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we moved on to our executive officers report. Keen, what have you got?
Got nothing to add. Thank you, Chair.
That was brilliant.
That was short.
That was brilliant.
Thank you so much. Okay, next we move on to commissioner announcements and any requests for any potential future agenda items. Commissioner McKenzie, I understand you have comments.
Do I get to take his time also?
No.
Fine. I just wanted to report on my meeting with Califco Legislative Committee. We met last Friday and Priscilla was on the line and she can pop in and fill in any blanks that I leave out. Real quick, our SB 938, which was signed by the governor, and that was the one that an ad hoc committee of CSDA and LAFCO spent 5 years on getting the consensus on the protest provisions and the protest voting. So that was approved by the governor on July 1. The golf course, SB 739 by Cortese, that's the one that was streamlined annexation of golf courses for 600 to 700 high-rise structures. And he is not pursuing that because we're going to put too many hangouts. The other one was SB 852, that's in appropriations today. That's the one that creates a resilience climate district act, and that's to provide, theoretically reading it is a financing district only, and therefore LAFCO is not included in any of the financing type districts. But then there's a question, because it's been amended so many times, that it may also be providing infrastructure. And then the comment was that if it provides a service, then LAFCO does need to be involved, so we're watching that. But the dates to keep in mind are the fact that the fiscal committee is meeting 8/1, which is, I think, Friday. Is that Friday?
That's today.
That's today? Tells you how much I can do.
Yeah.
Starting today, through the 12th, only the fiscal committee is meeting, no other committees. Then starting on August 15th to the 31st, 4 sessions only, no committee meetings. 8/25 is the last day to amend, and 8/31 is the last day to pass bills out of the respective houses. And 8/30 is the deadline for the governor to either sign or veto. That was a quick meeting up to that point. And then we got into the last item, which was relevant to the Cortese Knox 56-133, and that is the proposal by San Diego LAFCO. And we got to the point where we have a white paper that's been approved both by the board, Califco board, and the legislative committee. And that is being made pretty by Priscilla. And I guess we have a graphic artist who's going to make it pretty.
They're gonna be maps?
I hope so. Yeah, I've only been asking for some kind of relationship in geography. Anyway, back to my report. Once LAFCO, she said she was going to work on it as soon as she got off the call. Once that is completed, then it will be sent out to all of the LAFCOs. And that this basically came about with the executive directors, Califco executive director talking with the lobbyists that we have, was the fact that we did need some kind of white paper that indicated what and why we needed to change services and add in functions. So we are at that point now. And let's see. So that takes care of that part. Then I think Andy asked offline regarding the elections, and the elections deadline for submittal for position is August 12th. And our region is up for election on the public member and a city member. The southern region met, and we are proposing, and that's southern region is all of the counties in the southern region. The EOs and board members met, and we approved and will put forth our support. Aquanetta Warren from the city of Fontana, she is a city council person, and Derek McGregor, who is a LAFCO public member, Orange County. Also, I do have, the other thing was requesting sponsorships for the upcoming Califco conference in Newport Beach for the conference. And then two sad points that I would like to bring to the attention of the commission is that Jerry Gladbach has passed away about 2 weeks ago. And I don't know if anyone has been around to actually know Jerry. He's been very involved for the last almost more than 30 years with LAFCO in LA. Califco served as president. He's been the chair of LA LAFCO for eons. And he's also been president of the Association of California Water Agencies. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and we will miss him. Also, on a very sad note, our new executive director, she has moved to Sacramento, which is sad, but she lived in Mariposa County, and her house is now leveled. So that's kind of everything I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and we really appreciate your representation, the time and effort you put in the Califco, and thank you very much for the presentation today. Do we have any other board members or commissioners with any other comments? I think David.
Yes, sir. Chair Desmond, I just wanted to echo Commissioner McKenzie's comments about Jerry Gladbach. He was a leader everywhere he went, and he brought safety issues to the LA County DWP, his own water district, and he was the president of the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Authority for the last many years. And he's extremely a very heavy loss to all of us. So we all have to pull the rope harder just to make up. Thank you, Joe, for your comments.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Drake. Seeing no other comments, Keene, do you have anything to wrap it up here? Or
no, we are good.
All right, well, thank you very much. All right, if there's nothing else, this public hearing is closed. It will stand adjourned until our next meeting, which is set for October 3rd, 2022. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation.
Thank you.
Thanks.